Hi, Dr. Becky. How are you?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. I am so excited. I have been a fan of your work, and I mean, I don't know how you do it because it just seems like every time I tune in into your Instagram handle, there is an IG live, there is stories, there is lots of tools, lots of resources, which of course have been super important in this pandemic. And I mean, I just want to say thank you. I think I speak for all moms right now that you have been a lifesaver, especially when it comes to handling our kids, handling our home and our emotions. So thank you so much, and I will let you do what you need to do.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. And truly, I feel like the reason I can put out so much content is because you all, the members of the most amazing Good Inside community, put so much out. You put out your questions, you put out your stories, you put out your vulnerability, and that inspires me and leads me to be more curious and have more ideas that I want to put out there. So, I'm Dr. Becky. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in parenting, anxiety, and resilience. I'm also a mom of three. My kids are 9, 6, and 4. And as we talk, please know that you'll be hearing from Dr. Becky today. But Dr. Becky is not the mom of her kids, right? Just plain old Becky is the mom of her kids. So it's so easy to listen to someone speak and think, that's so hard for me, or that must all be so easy for everyone else. Just because I'm speaking about something doesn't mean that it's easy for me. It's probably actually something that's on my mind because I'm working on it. And even the things I put out there, I only do in my own life a certain percentage of the time. So let's just set that as the baseline and dive in. So I'm here to talk about boundaries, resentment, and rage. I think I hear a lot about parental rage, the understandable rage that comes out of us, maybe even at something seemingly small, but that is really the representation of the accumulation of so many things that we've held in, that we've done, that feel unseen, that feel unappreciated, where we feel run down. And what's really key is I think sometimes we ask the wrong question. We think, well, what am I supposed to do in that moment instead of having that rage come out, instead of yelling? If that's not a bad question, but here's a better question and the one we're going to focus on. The pathway that ends in rage starts where? And if we can focus on where it starts instead of where it ends, can I intervene at the starting point? So I'm just less likely to get to the point where all that rage comes out. It's almost like saying, what can you do when a pot is boiling over to get it not to boil over? Well, let's actually just focus on noticing that pot earlier, noticing when it's getting hot, turning down maybe the intensity way before you're at the boiling over point. So that's where I want to focus today because it's actually much more effective for change to focus at all of the things we can do early on rather than waiting to a point where almost none of us, me included, can do anything productive because our body goes into fight or flight mode. So, rage and boundaries, how does that relate? Well, let's talk about boundaries, right? Boundaries, I really mean this as a kind of continually recovering people pleaser. Boundaries are my best friend. I feel like I'm a boundary queen. I am continuing to work on being that way. And I'd ask us all to think about owning that kind of identity. So, what are boundaries? Well, boundaries really show us what is me and what is not me, right? I know that sounds odd, but if you think about a pool, what is a boundary of a pool? Well, it shows you where the pool starts and where it ends. It shows you where the pool is and where the pavement is. That's a boundary. We have to think about boundaries for ourselves in the same way. What is inside me and where do I end? And then, really, where does someone else begin? And if setting boundaries is hard for you, and if you end up at that place of parental rage often, one of the things we know is that boundaries are pretty unclear. And I'm going to get more into that. But right now, I want everyone to visualize instead of a pool, visualize a circle, right? And visualize the circle, and inside the circle is me, right? If you have a pen and paper, this is great. Draw a circle and then write me. And then maybe next to it, draw a dotted line circle where there's some openings, right? And that's also me in the middle. When we don't have clear boundaries, you can see in those openings, there's a lot of flowing back and forth. What's me and what's my kid? What's me and what's my partner? What's me and what's my mother-in-law? Is that her feeling or my feeling? My feeling or her feeling? We want to have firm boundaries, which is that first fully formed circle, not to shut people out, but actually to have a good sense of self so we can actually relate to people. When we don't have firm boundaries, there's a lot of interchanging of feelings and ideas, and that actually leads, understandably, to us feeling totally overwhelmed, to us overflowing with resentment and rage because we end up taking on so much that wasn't ours in the first place. So, what happens when we struggle to set boundaries? Well, if we struggle to set boundaries, we end up feeling exhausted, depleted, and we even get sick more often. We really, really do. We cannot separate, right, the kind of emotional state inside our body from the physical state, right? Because we're actually overwhelmed by the stress of everyone else. What else happens when we struggle to set boundaries? Increase in reactivity. We get triggered by seemingly small things because we are so often at the point of too much to handle. We are so often filled up with everything we can manage that it takes one tiny thing to set us off. And then we usually go into a guilt spiral. I'm so awful. I'm so reactive. That was so ridiculous. Let's go back to the first thing we said because this is so key. My rage, my reactivity. I need to start thinking about that as what set everything off. I really need to rewind, not what happened that led to that reaction, but what were the first couple of things that led to the buildup that made me vulnerable to that reaction. What else happens when we struggle to set boundaries? We feel taken advantage of. We feel taken for granted. This also builds up our resentment and anger. Let's go back to those two circles, one of which is fully formed, one of which has those dotted lines. When we don't put out firm boundaries, other people, we could say other people take advantage of us. I actually don't see it that way, but other people don't know where we start and stop if there's that kind of more dotted line. So, of course, we feel more taken advantage of, but we're really putting out mixed signals, right? So, we say to someone, as an example, I don't know if that date works. I'll think about it. They say, all right, well, that date works better for me. And we end up saying yes. And then we end up feeling taken advantage of. That's a very unclear messages. I would say that was a dotted line versus that date doesn't work for me. Here are two other dates that do. My boundaries are very clear. I'm actually going to get my needs met and I'm much less likely to feel taken advantage of because I've established what I need. What else happens when we struggle to set boundaries? Well, over time, we actually really continue to lose touch with what we want and need. If you go to that dotted line circle, we see how everyone else's wants and needs come in. But also, what happens is our wants and needs flow out of us. What do I want for dinner? My family's saying Chinese food. Do I want that? Maybe. I guess I want that. I don't know if I want that. We struggle to even know what we want. Do I want help with my kids tomorrow? I'm not even sure, right? We actually feel very unanchored. And when we're unanchored, we almost don't have access to a self. And then we feel very, very vulnerable to the requests made of us, to what people want of us. The boundaries and resentment and rage path is why we're here, right? When we struggle to set boundaries, we build up our resentment. And over time, that buildup of resentment pours out of us in rage. So we want to go back and learn how to form firmer boundaries. These are not selfish decisions. These are literally decisions that help us have a self. So many of us learn that having a self was selfish, and we have to really note that narrative and push it to the side because it doesn't work for us. The better we set boundaries, actually, the more we not only get our own needs met, the more sturdy people feel around us because they have a clear sense of who we are, what we need, and what we need from them. Okay, what can we do? I want to go over 3 really actionable items that everybody can leave with. I want to go over some mantras around boundaries. I want to talk about how to say no, which is a key part of setting boundaries. And I want to really talk about the steps to holding boundaries. If you do have a pen and paper, there probably will be some things you want to write down. This will also be recorded. So if you don't, no worries, you can come back to it. Let's come back to mantras. I'm a big fan of a mantra, and I know the person who just did an exercise before this also went over some mantras. Why? When topics get very overwhelming, we kind of feel like this. Oh, we feel all over the place. A mantra can distill a big idea into something very focused. That's very helpful, especially when we're trying to do something new. I'm going to share a couple mantras that I've often used around boundaries. There's not anything magical about any of them. None of them might resonate with you, but I'm going to throw out a couple. And if one does, just note it, right? And if it doesn't, come up with your own for sure. My boundaries protect me. My boundaries tell me what I need, and it's important to know what I need. My boundaries are not selfish. I am allowed to set boundaries, and other people are allowed to have feelings about them. I want to say something about that. I think we all have this fantasy that I'm going to set a boundary and everyone's going to cheerlead around me. This is not how it goes. Two things are true here. I can set a boundary that's good for me, and other people are allowed to have feelings about it. That doesn't make them a bad person. It doesn't make me a bad person. It just means two different things are going on at the same point. I want you to think further about this yourself. Is it hard for me to set a boundary if I anticipate other people being disappointed? This is one of the places most of us, especially most of us women, really struggle. And actually, it's very freeing when you visualize, wait, that's their disappointment. That's in their body. I'm setting the boundary. That's in my body. They're having disappointment. They're in their body. We both have two full circles. The boundary and decision is inside mine. The disappointment is inside theirs. Their disappointment doesn't mean I made a bad choice. My choice, which I feel like was a good choice, doesn't mean they're not allowed to feel disappointed. This is key. I am allowed to set a boundary, and other people are allowed to have feelings about them. Here's something related to that I often think about. I am responsible for asserting my boundaries in as respectful of a way as possible. I am not responsible for how other people respond or react to them. I have to go call my friend and tell her I can't actually go to her birthday dinner. I feel run down. There's a million reasons I can't go. What is the way I could communicate that would be both honest and direct and also respectful and impactful? Is she going to be mad? Is she going to be mad at me forever? Oh, wait, I'm not responsible for that point. I'm trying to just communicate it in a way I feel good about. How she ends up feeling, that's inside her body. We're allowed to have empathy for that feeling. I know it is. I get why you're upset. I get why you're disappointed. She's still allowed to have that feeling. I'm still allowed to make my decision. Here's another really key mantra. My boundaries enhance my healthy relationships. When we're in healthy relationships, setting boundaries communicates to other people what we need. And we want people to know what we need. I think we often fear my boundaries will really put my key relationships into danger. Well, to the degree our relationships depend on us not having needs, that might be the case. But that often doesn't work for us as we get older. We are allowed to have needs. Okay, I want to move to saying no. And related to saying no, I want to talk about this idea of creating space to be able to say no. What do I mean about that? And then I'll go over some more direct examples and scripts. We get asked something like, hey, could you be on this new school committee this year? And we know we don't have time, but all of a sudden we hear ourselves saying yes. We have a reflexive yes. How do we go from a reflexive yes to a reflexive no? We don't. There's too much in between. The step in between is creating space for yourself. I want every single person right now to memorize a line that sounds something like this. I have to think on that. Let me get back to you. I'm going to say it again. I have to think about that. Let me get back to you. If we're used to saying yes, 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 if we're used to being people pleasers, caretakers, all of which likely was adaptive in your early years when you were younger, that's why you became this way, but no longer is adaptive now, then giving a quick yes is the easiest thing. Your body actually likes it because it feels, oh, relief. I did the thing someone wants of me. I'm at peace, except later you're resentful and the rage. It's really, really hard to be asked a question. And if you're used to saying yes right away, saying, no, I can't do that. I get that. That's a big change. So we want to give ourselves space and time. I have to think on that. Let me get back to you. Oh, I promised myself I wouldn't say yes immediately to anything I was asked about in terms of adding a new responsibility. So I need to get back to you about that. Here's another line I love that's in between a yes and a no. I promised myself I wouldn't add anything else to my calendar in October. Thank you so much for thinking about me. I'm going to have to get back to you next month. They're somewhat delay tactics, but they're really giving ourselves the ability to set a boundary. That if setting a boundary is hard, then our kind of old circuitry is taking over and being boundaryless. What we want to do to really change that circuitry is give ourselves a pause. And then maybe later we can say, oh my goodness, I was asked to be on this committee. I really don't want to. Maybe we have a friend help us kind of feel good about saying no. Maybe we realize, wow, I definitely need to say no. I can't even make the committee times, but we haven't already kind of said yes and gotten ourselves into a hole. What else is important when we say no? Using direct language. This is also how we avoid resentment. When we say to someone, I don't know, I'm not sure if that could work. I can see if I can make that work. We might think we're saying no, but again, we're that dotted line. And it's very easy for anyone else to misperceive that. Here are words that people don't misperceive. No, I can't do that. No, I'm not able to make that happen versus I'll see if I can make that happen. That doesn't work for me. No, I'm not free. These words are simple, they're direct. I'm going to say some of them again. And actually, what would be powerful is everyone here, pay attention to how it feels. Imagining yourself say that. If it's uncomfortable, there's nothing wrong with you. It's actually just a sign that boundary setting is hard. So it's good to even practice this in front of a mirror before you expect yourself to say it to someone. No, I can't do that. No, I'm not able to make that happen. No, that doesn't work for me. No, I'm not free. And then the other ones, which are so powerful too. I have to think on that. Let me get back to you. I promised myself I wouldn't add anything else to my calendar. Here's another thing that I love to do when setting boundaries. If boundary setting is hard for you, sometimes being as honest as possible about the fact boundary setting is hard for you is the most liberating and effective way to set a boundary. We put it all out there. In some ways, it's very bold for someone to push us to do something when we've been very explicit about how we're trying to work on saying no. Here are words for that. That sounds great. I'm working on preserving more time for myself so I feel less overwhelmed. This means having to say no to things that sound exciting. Thanks for thinking of me. I can't do it. Would love to figure out something to do together. What's key there? Really be honest, the phrase I'm working on. I'm working on preserving more time for myself. I'm working on carving out time for my calendar where I don't have anything to do, just to be still and have some time to myself because I've noticed I've just gotten really overwhelmed and run down. So that means I end up having to say no to things that sound fun, just like this. Powerful, powerful words. And what a powerful thing to model to another person that we can say no just to preserve time, right? I used to write on my calendar, still. It'd be a half an hour here and there. What did that mean? It meant I had to be still. I had to sit down. I had to lay in bed. I had to maybe do some light stretching. I wasn't allowing myself during that time to produce anything, to say, oh, actually, I can go meet a friend for a quick coffee. My body really needed still time. If we all think about ourselves, we are running, right? I know we think about states of being as we're either being or we're doing. We do. No wonder that rage comes out because our body doesn't have any time to be. Being is actually very uncomfortable for a lot of us, especially if we're raised and have practiced doing. It's so important in the cycle of change. Okay, in our ending time, let's talk about how to set a boundary because I think this is really, really important and requires more steps to do it effectively than just saying set a boundary, right? So let's get super concrete here. A lot of the work we need to do to set a boundary with someone happens before we set a boundary. If you knew that taking a foul shot in a basketball game was hard for you and you felt the pressure, you would never wait to the game to take your foul shot. You'd go to the gym. You'd do some before work. Our emotional muscles are the same way. We have to practice the skills we want to use in the heat of the moment, outside of the heat of the moment, when our bodies feel calm and safe. First step before giving yourself explicit permission to have wants and needs. This sounds silly, but it's so important. I am allowed to have wants and needs. Hello, wants and needs inside me. You're in there. As you start speaking up more, I'll be listening. If this is hard for you, if you're thinking, Dr. Becky, I don't even know what my wants and needs are, that's fine. I always think about this as a friend where I have to call them 10 times to check in before they finally kind of say, yes, actually, let's get coffee. I want to talk to you about something that's upsetting me. But if I didn't call those 10 times, they wouldn't feel like it was safe enough to come. Your wants and needs are like that. Keep naming them, keep looking for them. If your wants and needs were something you had to really put away in your childhood, you had to really be a good girl and really be very outwardly focused, then they're scared. They're behind some door. Keep knocking. Second, really reflect in your boundary decision on what is me and what is not me. So here's an example. I really need to sleep in tomorrow. I always get up with my kids. It's always me. My husband always relaxes in bed, or my partner relaxes in bed. I really need my partner to get up. What is me and what is not me? Me, my need to sleep in, my exhaustion. What is my partner's? What is not me? How he might feel about getting up with the kids. This is really important, even to use your hands. That's his. I'm not pushing it away like I don't care, but it's not mine. I'm not the owner. So many of us, and this is going to be a big idea. This has been a life-changing idea for so many people pleasers. So many of us have learned to internalize someone else's disappointment or distress as our guilt. It's like their distress, oh, I have to wake up with the kids, comes out of their body and turns into our guilt. And we end up saying, oh, I mean, I guess not. I guess that's not a big deal. Resentment, rage. No. Tell yourself, my partner's allowed to feel annoyed. I'm allowed to sleep in. We can even empathize with that. I know it's hard to get up with the kids alone. I get it. That doesn't mean we're changing our mind. Actually, empathizing with it helps us remember that's my partner's feeling, not mine. So reflecting before you set a boundary or ask for a boundary on what's me and not me really helps be effective. Then recognize what might get in your way. And I like to think of a boundary support team, a friend, a therapist. Hey, I'm about to ask my partner, if I can sleep in tomorrow, or about to really tell my partner I'd like to sleep in tomorrow. Give me some cheerleading statements, right? We all need that support. Now let's talk about the during stage. I've done this prep work. Now I want to set that boundary. Okay. Communicate your boundary in simple words. Here does not work, right? I'm just thinking about, I kind of want to sleep in. I feel like I've woken up so many times. I'm kind of tired. I'm always up with the kids. And I just feel like maybe I could sleep in. No. Hey, I want to talk with you about tomorrow morning. I'd really like to get some extra sleep and sleep in, which would mean you're getting up and being with the kids in the morning. That's a boundary. It's simple and it's direct. I sometimes use the visual of a tennis court here to go again to that what's me and not me. My partner's on that side of a tennis court. I'm communicating with my partner. I'm on this side. Ooh, there's their feelings on that side. I can see them, but they don't have to come to my side. And when we see them coming, remind yourself, ooh, that's on their side of the tennis court. After, let's talk about how to set a boundary after, because so many of us, we get the, oh, I don't know, I'm so tired. And then we take that in as our guilt and we say, okay, forget it. And that's resentment and leads to rage. After, one of the key things is accepting our guilt. Our guilt is not ours likely. It is likely their disappointment. Or we have self-doubt. Self-doubt of, oh, is that a big deal? Should I have just woken up? The more prepared we are to have guilt and self-doubt and accept it, the easier it is to set a boundary. It's our fantasy that we won't have self-doubt or that we'll be relieved. That's what gets us in trouble. So instead, get prepared to say, hi, self-doubt, hi, guilt. You always come after I set a boundary. In fact, you're my best evidence that I just did something new. Then go back to that idea of what's me and not me. I'm allowed to make a decision. My partner's allowed to have their feelings, and go back to that boundary support team. Oh, I just got my partner. I feel so guilty. Maybe I shouldn't have. Almost prep that friend to say to you, you did something new. You did something great. Of course, it feels uncomfortable. I'm right here for you. So in conclusion, the parental rage we all think about really starts with how hard it is for us to set clear boundaries. So if you find yourself in a rage cycle, we really need to go back to that starting point. That's where we can change. That's where we can make impact. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to connect with all of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Becky. That was awesome. And I was scribbling down my frantic notes on all that you have. We'll be replaying it again. Love what you brought up. That's a great, great recommendation for everyone. So thank you so much, Dr. Becky, for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. And
Thank you.
can't wait to continue to see what you do.